Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are tuning in. Thank you so much for joining me today. Happy Friday, everyone. And yeah, really delighted to be here with you all today. Thanks. Um, of course, my presence here would be impossible without all of you attending and engaging. And so I really want to just take a moment to voice my appreciation around that. And so today's offering is a somewhat of a Q&A. I got several questions that came in. Interestingly, I got some personal questions, which I don't generally speak to in this setting, but I will address one of those because I thought it was quite a fun question. And then also I got questions around the koan that I read in a previous session, which I'll go through again today, Zen koan, and speak a little bit, if we have time, a little bit to the relationship between compassion and equanimity. But before we do all of that, well, I'll just speak very quickly to this question that came in, this interesting question here. So I had on the talk that I gave last week, I believe, on compassion. I read through a Pink Floyd song and using the words of that song as pointers towards how we often close our heart to the suffering and pain of others and ourselves. On the Turning Away was the name of the song, and I did you just kind of went off on a little tangent there in that session around art and music and how artists and musicians really, I think, strive and have been striving for many, many decades to create the perfect lyric or the perfect music that expresses that quality of the heart, of love, the quality of love that's inherent in the human heart. And the question that I got was, well, what other what other songs or music do you feel really reflects that somatic experience? And I think that's a wonderful exploration because, when we can really connect to the somatic experience of kindness, of compassion, of joy, of equanimity, of love, that is a window into um, bringing that passing state into the nervous system to create a permanent trait. So when we can identify the somatic markers of love or kindness or compassion or generosity, whatever it is that we're working with, um, then we can go into that somatic experience and really stay with that for some time. Each breath that we stay with a particular felt experience, the studies show us that millions of neurons are firing and wiring together towards that experience. And so, if you want to be more loving, or more kind, or more compassionate, or more equanimous, or more joyful, or more grateful, or more giving, or whatever it is, more confident, whatever it is, you can go into the felt experience of that quality and just spend some time there. You're training the nervous system to be more sensitive to that quality. So all of that being said, there's a number of songs that I think really are beautifully written and express all of these wonderful qualities: love, kindness, compassion, and so forth. Um, my favorite lately has been "As" by Stevie Wonder. I'm not that familiar with those lyrics, but the way Stevie really powerfully presents the vocals throughout that song, it really, for me, brings up that felt experience of love and connection. Um, "Hey Jude" by the Beatles also, and maybe I'm dating myself here a little bit. But there is one album there's no lyrics actually. It's all instrumental. The whole album is improvised from start to finish, and it's called the Köln Concert, Koln concert by Keith Jarrett. Keith Jarrett is primarily a jazz pianist, but he did some solo improvisations as well, and a lot of them are really remarkable and beautiful. He was truly a gifted musician. But the Köln concert really, I think, expresses the creativity of love, the playfulness of love, and also the poignancy of love, the grief and the sorrow that's inherent in that project of opening our heart to others. So, yeah, if you're looking for a window in through music, I think the Köln concert, Koln by Keith Jarrett. And I think right now you can find it on YouTube. I'm not sure about that, but anyway, it's worth investigating. That might be a nice way into the felt experience. So thank you for that question. Always fun to receive questions like that. And before we get into some of the heavier lifting today, I'd like to do a guided meditation. And this meditation will be a meditation on equanimity. And so we'll offer phrases of equanimity to our own heart. And perhaps we'll offer the phrases then to the hearts of others as well. And that can give us a different kind of perspective on the phrases and the quality of equanimity. Remember, this quality of equanimity is the quality of non-judgment. The quality of non-judgment. And so the phrases that we'll be working with here, may I feel safe. May I be free from preference and prejudice. May I know things just as they are. May I experience the world knowing me just as I am. May I see into this present moment. And so in a few moments then I'll ring the bell and I'll guide us in. We'll do this for maybe 15 minutes or so. Enjoy. So the invitation here is just to arrive into this present moment. And there are many ways of arriving and connecting to the present moment. And for this practice, let's start by noticing the sounds. And so we're invited here to simply become listeners of the present moment. So we might notice sounds generated by nature, such as bird songs or perhaps a dog barking nearby. There might be a conversation unfolding, crickets singing, rain falling on the roof. There might be sounds generated by electronics or appliances, machinery, the occasional car or truck passing by, or the gentle hum of a fan, air conditioner, or a heater, some appliance rumbling. The sound of my voice. And if your environment is particularly quiet, you might notice the sound of stillness that's there. There's always a backdrop of silent space, even if there's an abundance of sound. There's always this backdrop of stillness. And perhaps noticing how the combination of silence and sound creates the canopy of the aural field. And so some of these sounds might feel pleasant and other sounds might feel unpleasant. But regardless of how we interpret the sounds, recognizing how sounds are always present moment. And so right away we're invited to practice equanimity, right? Not judging the sounds, but simply noticing the sounds as they appear. They might stay for a while and disappear. Not trying to control the experience in any way. Just listening, just resting. And there may be thoughts that arise, and that's normal. We could note that thinking, letting the distraction go, and returning back to the actual experience of sound and silence. And so there's no problem with thought. We don't need to get into judging ourselves for having thoughts. But if they become distracting, letting them go and returning back to the present. And then while we're here resting and listening to the present moment, the invitation then is to bring awareness to the body. Just noticing the body, how the body is in this present moment. Noticing the areas of ease, comfort, warmth, pleasantness. And equally noticing the areas of the body that feel tense, stressed, irritated. Not trying to change anything or problem solve. Just noticing how it is right now. You might even offer a phrase here like, the present moment is just like this right now. Sensations of the body, sounds, the silence. We might also notice sensations of clothing resting against the skin. And including then the temperature of the air against the surface of the skin. This might give us a full view of the entire body. Noticing the texture of the air, the texture of the clothing. We might also notice the weight of the body against the cushion or chair. Sensations arising as the feet contacting the ground or the floor. Letting go of any need to problem solve just for these few minutes of practice. Simply observing the present moment, this frame of non-judgment. So we begin to offer these phrases of equanimity into our own heart. May I feel safe. May I feel safe. And if you'd like, you can actually place a hand on the heart as a way of inviting the phrases to land. May I feel safe. May I be free from preference and prejudice. May I be free from preference and prejudice. May I know things just as they are. May I know things just as they are. May I experience the world knowing me just as I am. May I experience the world knowing me just as I am. May I see into this present moment. And then, perhaps in the next breath or two, I'd like to invite us to bring into awareness a friend or a family member, a loved one. Some being that when we think of them, we naturally want them to be safe and well. You might have more than one person coming to mind, or pet for that matter, and that's normal. And just know that you can always come back to this practice with other people to work with. For now, just selecting one person or pet. May you feel safe. May you feel safe. May you be free from preference and prejudice. May you be free from preference and prejudice. May you know things just as they are. May you know things just as they are. May you experience the world knowing you just as you are. May you experience the world knowing you just as you are. May you see into this present moment. Then noticing any resistances to the phrases that might be there. Knowing that resistance is normal and natural for the practice. You don't need to try to figure that out or get rid of it. And knowing too any feelings of non judgment or any feelings of balance. And really going into that for a moment, really exploring that quality of equanimity. Might feel like a taste of freedom. The quality of clear seeing. If you're using that move of compassionate support, I'd invite us to place our hands back by our sides or on our legs, wherever's comfortable. Mm. And in a few moments, then I'll ring the bell and bring us back into a conversational space. And thank you all for joining me in that guided meditation. If your eyes are closed, you might just gently open them and start to look around and reorient yourself to your surroundings. And so I got some questions around equanimity and compassion and how they're related. And I also got an interesting question around the koan of Tao Wei and Yun Yuan around the Bodhisattva Kuan Yin and the 10,000 hands and eyes. Maybe I'll speak to that first. So I'll go ahead and read the koan again. By the way, koan is a very gross oversimplification of koan practice here. It's generally some sort of exchange between a student and a teacher, or between two teachers perhaps, or two practitioners. And it's meant to be read through, meditated on, contemplated, and it could take weeks, months, or years, but eventually insight arises from this contemplation, koan contemplation. We're not going to do all of that, obviously, here today, but I'll read through the koan and offer just a little bit to it. Um, yeah, so here it is. Yun Yuan asks Dao Wei, why is it that Kuan Yin has all of those hands and eyes? By the way, Kuan Yin said to have 10,000 hands and eyes, hands, arms, and hands, And inside the palm of each hand is an eye that's said to be able to see the truth. So, really reflective of the non dogmatic approach to these traditions, right? An infinite way of seeing the truth. Okay. So the Yunwan asks Dao Wei, how does Kuan Yin use all of those hands and eyes? Or why does Kuan Yin have all of those hands and eyes? Dao Wei answers, it's like feeling behind you for a pillow in the middle of the night. I understand, says Yunyuan. What do you understand? Asks Dao Wei. The whole body is hands and eyes, replied Yunyuan. Dao Wei says, very well expressed, but it doesn't quite say it all. Yunyuan says, well, what do you say then, older brother? And Dao Wei says, it's all hands and eyes. It's all hands and eyes. And so last time when I read the koan, I just kind of left it there, and yeah, just to offer. The question was about, what does that mean? And so compassion, true compassion, there's no one there, right? Compassion is a selfless act. So the whole body is hands and eyes. The first answer from Yunyuan, there's still room for an autonomous I that's offering the compassion, right? The whole body is hands and eyes. And then there would be a personality, there would be a being, an I there offering that compassion. So when we go to it's all hands and eyes, it's really reflecting that selfless nature. When holding space for another in the midst of their struggle, or holding space for ourselves in the midst of our own struggle, there's no, in that moment or moments, there's no I there. And then the I shows up like a few minutes later. Oh, that felt good. Look what I can do. Right. And that's fine. And that's fine. That's normal. But in that moment of offering compassion, the self disappears, necessarily so. There's no one to get in the way at that point. So I hope that's helpful. Of course, like I mentioned, koan practice, it's very complex and rich. And if you want to take that up as a practice, that's a good starting point, actually. You could go through that and really meditate on it. The thing with koan practice, it's now that I'm thinking about it, it's actually quite a lot like somatic experiencing, in that it's an invitation to let go of the logical thinking part of the brain, and to really feel the teaching that's being offered there. And so I want to talk a little bit about this relationship between equanimity and compassion, right? So maybe we can do that by simply going through the phrases and looking at the phrases back and forth. And so I've added a phrase to the initial set of phrases. I added, may I feel safe, or may you feel safe, may we feel safe. And I offer that to all of the Brahma Viharas, because all of the abodes, kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. Because those qualities aren't so accessible if we're not feeling safe. Right? So safety first, as they say. And so first we're invited to to move into a quality of safety. But then the equanimity, the compassion phrases diverge slightly. So the first one is quite different. Right? The compassion phrase, um, may I be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. Right? And so, you know, first the detail of that, may I be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. Right? So there's a, they're not always the same. Right? The suffering and the cause of suffering are two different qualities of a present moment experience. And then may I be free from preference and prejudice. So these are quite different. Right? And so often when I offer this phrase, may I be free from preference and prejudice, people get a little bit, well, there's a lot of resistance that comes up around that. Right? And the operative word is free. We're not, this isn't an invitation to let go of our preferences and just be completely neutral. That's indifference. And they're a little bit related. It's often said that equanimity can slide into indifference because they feel quite similar. But equanimity is an invitation to really fully open our heart to the present moment. And in that open hearted warmth, we recognize that our preferences, our prejudices, um, they're worth honoring, but they're not worth being attached to. Right? So that's where the freedom comes in. We're gonna have preferences. I prefer that my back didn't hurt. Right? I prefer that all of the paperwork that I'm going through around visas right now didn't exist. Right? But if I was attached to those preferences, then when I had to do that bureaucratic paperwork garbage, when I had to do whatever it is, or maybe I prefer some outcome at in my work life, right? And that outcome doesn't come through. Okay, okay, I'm not attached to that outcome, right? My sense of self, my sense of well-being isn't determined by the outcome of my preferences. Right. So there's a freedom there. We can see our preferences and prejudices and honor them. But if life takes a different turn, then that's what we are invited to engage with. Right? So we don't shut down in the face of that adversity. And so right there we can see the connection to compassion. Because if, yeah, maybe that situation worked out differently than we'd hoped, and that, that doesn't feel good. The pain is there. Oh, let me let me offer some compassion to that. What does that feel like in the body? That upset, the tension in the abdomen, the clenching of the jaw, the tension behind the eyes, maybe some perspiration. Let me recognize too that all other human beings feel these feelings from time to time. And let me offer kindness to myself around that situation. Ooh, yeah, that's really sad that that didn't work out. And so the compassion can soften the disturbance, the pain, the upset, and then we can more easily hold that with equanimity. Right? Okay. We metabolize the rawness of that situation, and then we're ready. Our heart is ready to be equanimous. Right? So these phrases of equanimity, they can very often be misinterpreted as it doesn't matter how I'm feeling, I'm just going to pretend to be okay with everything. And that's not helpful. Right? Then we're just papering over the cracks. And so compassion can really serve us to find our ground in the midst of disturbance, in the midst of our life not going according to our preferences and prejudices. May I know things just as they are. The equanimity phrase. The compassion phrase, may I accept things just as they are. So here we're getting into that clear seeing quality of equanimity. May I know things. May I know this present moment, putting aside my preferences and prejudices. Right? May I know things. May I know this present moment, the very texture of it. What's the feeling of this moment? What's the actual facts of this experience? There was that old police show in the 50s, right? Dragnet. Just the facts, right? Just the facts. There's a really wonderful meditation in the mindfulness based relapse prevention program. It's called Friend Walks Down the Street. And I really find this to be very, very rich practice where we're invited to visualize or imagine ourselves walking down a comfortable, familiar street. We see somebody we know, a friend of ours, walking the opposite direction towards us, across the street towards us. And as we get close, we wave to them, say, "Hey, how's it going? Hey, good to see you." And they don't respond. And that's all the information we're given. And in the practice, then we allow space for all of our reactivity to arise. And what I notice in my own practice and offering that practice to others is that very often the mind starts to go into stories. How could they do this? How could they ignore me? I haven't seen this person in years. I'd really love to talk to them. Some people, they wanted to punch the person or yell at them. Other people just ignore it and they kind of move into that indifference, right? Just to ignore it and just keep walking, whatever. And this really, is a great practice to illustrate the meaning-making machine that is this brain, right? We want to know why that's happening, right? May I know things just as they are is an invitation to get rid of all of that mental proliferation, all of that projection, all of that inference, right? What do I know in this situation? I know that my friend, who I haven't seen in a long time, is walking past them. Anything could be happening for that person, right? And so that's a great way of bringing up how we're not equanimous, right? And in that scene, this is why the resistances are so important in this type of practice. As we see our resistances, as we see our mental proliferation, we recognize I don't want to say ignorance in that, but it is kind of an ignorance. We recognize the delusion, That's there. And it's so interesting because delusion, the tricky thing with delusion is it masquerades as wisdom, right? So this phrase, may I know things just as they are, it's that invitation to explore what's the actual texture experience of this moment and what am I adding. I got an email from the boss. Can you meet today at 9:30? That's all it says. So where does the mind go? Right? Am I Is my mind making up stories? I'm going to get fired. I'm going to get a verbal uh, reprimand. I'm going to get a raise. I'm going to get a promotion. Uh, or am I able to just be with the fact that I just got this email with one sentence? May I know things just as they are. May I experience the world knowing me just as I am. I love that phrase. And so the phrase of compassion, may I experience the world accepting me just as I am. So we can start to perhaps feel the difference or explore the difference here between being known and being accepted. What's the difference being known and being accepted? Being seen, the difference between being seen and being loved, perhaps. Being seen and being befriended. Being known and being accepted. Both have a kind of warmth to them. But the warmth of compassion is really it's almost an invitation into the embrace of ourself, of another, of the world, right? May I experience the world accepting me just as I am. And again, we can see the relationship, right? Equanimity helps us to move in to knowing people free from preference and prejudice, to know them just as they are. And then we can experience being known just as we are. Maybe that's feels a little safer than accepted. And again, the resistances come up. If the world knew this about me, they certainly wouldn't know me just as I am. Or maybe some fear arises. Well, I better change this about me before. And that's normal. That's fine. Right? Because then when we go into that doubt, then we're no longer exploring, experiencing the world knowing me just as I am. Because that means including all of my wounds, my downfalls, my shortcomings, my transgressions, all of it. My beauty, my laughter, my compassion and joy, my strength, my courage. The whole spectrum of our very being is called into being known. And so, in a sense, in that invitation to explore, we're exploring what would it be like to inhabit an equanimous world or a compassionate world. Hmm. May I experience the world knowing and accepting me just as I am. Hmm. May I see into this present moment. Again, that invitation into clear seeing, not projecting our patterns, our views onto the situation, onto our life. And so, really, wanting to sum all of that up somehow. Um, and so, here I've really gone through compassion and equanimity and really trying to distinguish the two and also bring out highlight the similarities that are there. Hmm. I hope that's helpful. All four of these Brahma Viharas, these abodes of the heart, are related, intimately related. Kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And so here I just went through the two because those were the two that I got questions on. I hope that was helpful. I will be hosting another Q&A session um, on Tuesday. I think it'll be on Tuesday morning. That's the plan anyway. Um, so wishing you all a lovely weekend. If you are in a place in the world that celebrates Labor Day, I'm wishing you a wonderful Labor Day weekend. And thank you again. Thanks for your questions. If you do have any other questions, please do send those along. I'll be talking about addressing questions primarily about joy and kindness and joy tomorrow, Tuesday. Rather. Okay. Have a great weekend. I'll ring the bell to close this out.